Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our TGT Top 5 series, showing which one, me, basically, and a podcast regular, usually, although it's been changing over the last couple of days, get the basically ideals and thoughts and strange occurrences of an Arsenal-related topic in a top 5 structure. Yesterday, we had a chat with Alan Smith, so if you had a chance to check that out, please do. But today, I'm joined by a very old friend. It's Danny. How you doing, pal?
I'm all right, Tom, dear boy. How are you? You're looking well. I like your poster, your thing in the background.
Oh, it's not bad, is it? It's nice. It's
amazing.
How when I said very old friend, I meant like how long we've known each other rather than your age.
I think technically both right.
Sure. I mean, your words, not mine. So we should explain that our listeners that are not aware of Birdcamp Wonderland, but should be, if you're not, used to be on there a while back and then just moved on, came on to the Gooner Talk, and me and Danny have stayed in touch for a long, long time. But this is the first time you've been on here since I've started taking over, and it's a pleasure, mate. It's an absolute pleasure.
It is. It's good for you to be in charge at last of telling me what to do. Making me performing monkey.
So to be fair, I learned most of the technical stuff of this from you, and if it weren't for Danny, I don't think there'd be a Gooner Talk here. So who knows? But
and Craig.
It was of course, Craig. Yeah, I was relying on you to come up with sort of a left field choice for one of these shows, and you delivered. It's fair to say, with kind of the left field picks of Arsene Wenger signs. Why did you choose this topic?
I was watching them, and then I was watching Drew's one, and everyone knows Drew is magnificent. And I thought, wow, if I had to do one, I didn't plan on coming on. I just said to you, how about you do this one? And then I picked a few of Arsene Wenger's weird transfers that back in the time when it wasn't all social media and all you went by was newspaper reports, and they could basically say whatever they want because no one could ever challenge them. And now I've realised in recent years that some of the things that I've come up with, they have been revised slightly. And I thought, how would I do one? So I sent you a DM on WhatsApp saying, it's not a DM on WhatsApp, is it? It's a message saying, how about this for top 5? And then you said, well, do you want to come on and do it? I thought, well, yeah, I do.
There you go. See, it's just, I was like, why would I get anyone else to talk about something that you clearly know loads about? And Danny goes and sends me an essay that, I mean, I couldn't have written it any better with all the information on each player. So, I mean, it's top class stuff. Basically, I barely need to do a thing on this one, which is great for me, but it does mean that you're going to have to talk through these players because some of them, I'm going to be very honest, I like to think that I know quite a bit about Arsenal, but some of these players have skipped off my radar. They really did. And the listeners obviously notice that as we go through, especially some of the younger ones. So if we jump into our number 5 pick, you've gone with Alberto Mendez. Talk me through this, who I thought was a Spaniard and turns out to be German.
Yeah, well, when we first bought him, his name was Alberto Mendez, and then later on, I think he added the dash Rodriguez, another interesting midfield player. So the notes that I made, I went over what I wrote down the players, and I wrote down what I remembered, and then I went back and checked what I remembered, and I think I got most of it right. So I put in the summer of 1997, and I went and checked Mark and Andy's Arsenal history site for this. We had a pre-season tour of France and Holland in the late part of the summer, and it was reported on Wikipedia that Wenger saw Alberto playing for a German 5th division side. Sorry, Drew. FC Fürth.
Drew will correct you.
And we have seen the likes of Carl Jenkinson and Vardy and people like that come from our 5th tier of football and make it to the Premier League. But the 5th tier of German football is really, I mean, that's regional football. That would be maybe the 7th or the 8th tier of English football. And we bought him for £338,000. Now, that figure I got from transfer market, and that's always slightly off a little bit. But I used, for continuity, I used that for all of the transfers here, just so they'd all be out. They'd all be equally wrong. But I think it may have been about 350 grand at the time. And then he came to Arsenal, and you thought, well, it's a 5th division player. He's not going to be playing in many games. And this was in our 97-98 double-winning season, personally my favourite Arsenal season. And he played 2 games in the Cup, 3 games in the Premier League against Crystal Palace, where we won 2-0. Sheffield Wednesday, where we started the game, we lost 2-0. And then the 4-0 loss to Liverpool at the end of the season because we were coming up to the FA Cup final where we smashed Newcastle to do the double. And then in the next 5 games, next season he played 5 games. and made his Champions League debut. Like this, if you've got a list of Arsenal players who've played one game in the Champions League, it's nearly always a dead rubber at the end of the Champions League, quite in group stages, and that's what he did against Panathinaikos. We actually beat them, and some places say he scored the first goal, and others say it was an own goal. So I
can't find that goal anywhere. I've been looking because after your description, but I'm gonna have to do some more digging because I can't find whether to make that choice. I'm lost within the atoms of the game somewhere.
I think I was looking at 11v11.com and they said it was his goal, and I think Transfer Market said that it was an own goal. So I didn't check Mark and Andy's, did I? They would have known for certain.
I feel like he deserved it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and then he had loans on out to AEK Athens in Greece, and then Unterhaken. He's going to be getting angry at this. And then we released him in January 2002, and then he went off to the Spanish second division with Racing Ferrol. Is that right?
Sounds like it. Ferrol.
And then he went back to Germany, and he spent the rest of his career playing for teams that began with SPGG. I think there was about 3 or 4 teams that he later went on to play for. But I mean, that has got to be one of the most amazing. Like I was saying with when Lee Dixon was on with Mike and Andy on their show, and Lee went from playing in the 4th division to winning the 1st division title with Arsenal back in the late 80s. And I thought, well, could that be done again? And then you realise, well, he's done even better. He did the double.
Of course, yeah. So it's mad that these players come about and then just disappear off the radar. So that's our number 5 slot. Our number 4 slot is someone that most, if not all, Arsenal fans would be aware of. That is Sylvain. Now, for me, I was surprised Sylvain popped up on this list. I understand now after reading your description about the circumstances of his departure, but I'll let you talk me through Sylvain.
Well, in Brazil, my Brazilian team are Corinthians, and this is why, because we bought a Brazilian player from Corinthians in 1998. They have 2 leagues over there. They have their normal league, like our Premier League, and then they have a league that, that's it. And then they have their regional leagues, which would be like a London league, like we used to have back in the war days. It'd be London.
Yeah, like Spain's like that now. They have regional leagues under the 1st division.
That's it. And yeah, so he was playing over there, and we bought him in. He won the league with Corinthians in '98, and then we bought him in the summer of '99 for $4 million to replace Nigel Winterburn. Sad times. He played 45 games for Arsenal that season, and us fans, we loved him because Nigel Winterburn, bless him, he was a defender's defender. But you see him being replaced by Sylvain, who's up and down those, like it's commonplace now in Premier League football with the wingers being wing backs. And he was magnificent. I think he might have even won an award like Arsenal fans or a Premier League award for the best left back of the season. And then in his second season, he played 34 games. But around January 2001, he lost his place to Ashley Cole. Now, they said he lost his place. I think it was more like he got injured because Ashley Cole was playing for, I think, Division Championship Crystal Palace. And we got him back on loan. And it just turned out that Ashley Cole was the best left back the Premier League's ever seen. And then there were stories in the papers saying that he used a forged Portuguese passport to get a work permit with Arsenal as he was Brazilian. Now, everyone knows that even back then, you wouldn't get a passport. I mean, a work permit to play in the Premier League, especially I think he only ever played 1 game for Brazil or 2. So back then, if you hadn't played 10 or 15 games for Brazil, you weren't going to get a work permit, were you?
No, something weird like that.
Yeah, and there's the connections between Portugal and Brazil because they kind of share a language. But you see so many times Portuguese teams will go up and they'll hoover up all the best players from Brazil, keep them there for a couple of years. They'll get a work permit to play in Europe, and then they'll sell them on for an absolute fortune. I mean, that happened with our own David Luiz, didn't it? I think he started in Portugal, and then. Then there were some investigations, and there was the quote: the Portuguese authorities at the time said they had no records of a dual Portuguese nationality. Then Arsenal quickly sold him for 3.4 million to Celta Vigo in the summer in Spain in the summer of 2001. Now, when you buy a player for 4 million and he turns out to be absolutely magnificent, you don't sell him at a £600,000 loss to what was then. I mean, Celta Vigo were an ambitious team back then, but they're not the Celta Vigo that they turned out in late years. I think actually got relegated from La Liga a few years later. Many of us Arsenal fans wondered at the time why we were letting such a great player leave the club and for such a little amount of money. And then a few years later, he joined Barcelona and went on to win almost everything in the game, and then eventually got himself dual nationality, but this time it was Brazil and Spanish, not Brazilian and Portuguese.
He was one of those. I mean, the goal against Chelsea is the one I remember most about him, when he just slammed it with the outside of his boot into the left-hand side of the goal, and it was very odd when he left. And even I must have been 8, 9, years old when we sold him, and it wasn't. I obviously look back on him, not someone I would have experienced or remembered of great wealth, but looking back on who he was and seeing him play in a lot of fixtures, watching them back, it was odd to see us depart with someone, as you say, for a loss of £600,000, which for Arsenal back then was still a fairly sizable amount of money. Quite unlike our number 3 choice, a player that I genuinely didn't know we had. Thomas, in fact, we were trying to discuss how I pronounce his surname. I don't think Drew could even help us out here. Thomas Danilevičius, who I've checked is now the president of the Lithuanian Football Federation, which is quite interesting. Didn't know that. So we've got a president we used to have. But talk me through, how do you even know this guy?
It was back in that time, because Chelsea have got the famous model at the moment. They go up and hoover up the best young players from around the world. Then they loan them all out, and then they either keep them themselves or they do a De Bruyne or the other Hazard brother, and then they flog them on for an absolute fortune. So Arsenal tried this, but where was Chelsea and Man City shopping at Marks and Spencer's? Arsenal were doing theirs at Asda and Poundland and stuff like that. So we got this bloke we refer to as Thomas from now on. So then we kind of people laughing at us. We bought him from the Swiss team Lausanne for 1.35 million in July 2000 when he was 22 years old. What a weird season he had. He scored 4 goals in 7 games for that Swiss team in the Swiss First Division. He signed for them in the summer of 1999. Hold on. And then he missed the first 23 games of the season. I thought, well, that's very strange. And then he played 215 minutes in a spell of 7 out of their next 9 league games. And then he was out injured for the rest of the season. And during that 215 minutes, he scored 4 goals in 7 games. I think he played a 90-minute, a 60-minute, and the other 5 games were 16 minutes or less. And you thought, well, that's not really any kind of pedigree. I mean, anybody can. I mean, one of your favourite players of all time was an absolute legend in the Austrian league, wasn't he, before he went off to China?
Soriano, yeah.
Oh, bless him. Yeah. And so then he was out for the rest of the season. Then he joined Arsenal, and I was watching a pre-season friendly. Now, didn't check where this was. It was against Barcelona, and I think it might have been at Ajax's new stadium. And then I see this bloke walking out and I'm thinking, who the hell are you? And at first I thought, well, maybe it was a giant ball boy, someone who's 6'2" and in his early 20s. And I had absolutely no idea who it was. And as this was back in the summer of 2000, the internet wasn't what it is now. But you managed to, I think they mentioned who he was. And it turns out that we paid that much money for a bloke no one had ever heard of. So that season he played 3 games, 2 in the Premier League. They were Christmas over the Christmas and New Year. So I think one was on Boxing Day and one was on New Year's Day, which are 5 days apart. And then he played 11 minutes against Sunderland. And 2 days later, he got 26 minutes against Charlton. And then 5 days after that, he got 9 minutes against Carlisle in the FA Cup. And that was his entire Arsenal career. And you're thinking, wow, that's not something you're going to look back on with any kind of great pride. And then he had loans with Dunfermline, and we had a feeder club in Belgium called Beveren, because Belgium, like Portugal, you get if you play there.
Torre there, didn't we? I think Torre and Graham Stack went there as well.
Yes, Graham Stack, the goalie.
A fan out there, I think, when he went to Beveren. I think an amazing video on YouTube. If you don't see it, Graham Stack punching a fan as they run onto the pitch. It's amazing.
And it's not like a light punch, is it? He nearly takes the bloke's head off.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I listened to him talking on the Magic Sponge podcast a few years back now, and he was talking about it, and he said there was this old gate, and he was like, well, it's a massive iron gate, they're not going to get through there. And then he noticed that the man that's meant to be guarding the gate was fast asleep next to it, and then all these fans start piling through. Fan comes towards him, he punches him, and the guy that was next to him saw that his mate's been knocked out, and he suddenly starts running away. So I think he scared him off a little bit. But it's brilliant stuff.
It's no Brian Clough when he lumped one of the fans when they came running on the pitch, grabbed him and made the kid apologise. Yeah, so we had in Belgium, if you play there, you get a work permit, a European work permit quicker. So we sent him to Dunfermline and then Belgium with Beveren, and then eventually we released him and he went to join Livorno in Italy in the summer of 2002. So it was only a short time with Arsenal. But then you look on Wikipedia, he ended up playing for 16 teams and played 71 times for Lithuania. So like you were saying, I didn't know that he was the president of the Lithuanian FA, but 71 games for Lithuania. I mean, he's probably some kind of legend over there, and for 16 other clubs around the world.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the fact that he's now president is impressive. Maybe the fact that he was at Arsenal gave him a little bit of a sway in that election. Who knows? Number 2 is someone that I always look at this guy as the whipping boy of Arsenal's insults. I can't believe he ever played for Arsenal, along with Stepanovs, and that is Nelson Vivas. So many stories about how bad this guy was. But talk me through your memories of him.
Yeah, when we brought him in, he was, I think, to replace Lee Dixon, but he ended up not replacing Lee Dixon, and Lee Dixon still stayed on afterwards. But you knew that if Nelson Vivas was playing, someone was going to get kicked up in the air. And he was the kind of player that I loved. You know, he's going to get stuck in, he's going to give people a good whacking. And he wasn't too bad with the ball, but my notes are the alleged story of Nelson was that Arsenal wanted to buy him from Boca Juniors, but Boca Juniors wanted too much money for him. So then Arsenal agreed to deal with Lugano, another Swiss team. They've never been mentioned so much on an Arsenal podcast in their life in Switzerland, where Lugano would buy him, then sell him to Arsenal in the next summer. So Boca sold him to Lugano in July 97. Now, some places say it was a loan. It's a bit like the Junichi Inamoto thing where people go, well, we had him. Why have we let him go? Well, Junichi was only on loan from us from Gamba Osaka.
It's it's a couple of years back, Vitolo was at Sevilla. Atletico Madrid wanted to buy him, but they had a transfer ban, so they sold him to Las Palmas for 6 months until their transfer ban finished. But they say it was like a loan, and then he signs from Las Palmas for Atletico. It's a similar sort of situation.
Didn't Torres, didn't he sign for somebody and then they loaned him out to AC Milan for 2 seasons as soon as they bought him?
Yes. Let me just find it. I remember that he was at AC Milan. You know, was he on loan at AC Milan from Chelsea? Or
I thought he went back to Atletico and then they loaned him to, said, oh, he's off to Milan now for 2 seasons.
He went on loan from Chelsea to AC Milan, then signed for AC Milan, then went on loan to Atletico and then signed for Atletico.
Oh, so, there you go. It's a little bit like who was that bloke who was the one who for Man United? He was South American, and Inter Milan needed a striker, so they bought him, and then they realised after he was ineligible for the Champions League.
I don't know who that was.
Yeah, that was only a few years ago. He was Uruguayan, played for Man United.
Forlan?
That's it, Diego Forlan. Yeah, they bought him, and they couldn't play him, so then he left quite quickly after. And I think they played quite a bit of money for him as well. Should I get on with it? I think I should. Yeah. Right. So then, Boca Juniors sold him to Lugano in July 1997, and it was a very odd move. As Nelson had recently broke into the Argentinian squad and had played 5 times for Argentina in 1997. Argentina. I've gone full Trump. I've invented countries that don't exist. So for a player of that quality to sign for a recently relegated Swiss team, I mean, you wouldn't expect an Argentinian international to go and play in Switzerland anyway, but they've just been relegated. Now, it's taken ages trying to figure out the Swiss leagues, but they had been relegated. So they bought him for their Swiss Division 2 promotion charge, and they ended up finishing second in that division, and they got promoted back again. As soon as they got promoted, they sold him to Arsenal. So I've put here, very odd, especially when his Boca Juniors team had just finished runners-up in the opening part of the Argentinian league, because they have the opening league and then the closing league, and I think then they combine them or some nonsense. It's just a mess down there. So this made the story even more believable. Arsenal then signed him in the summer of 1998 for 1.6 million, and Lugano got promoted that season with Nelson playing 22 games. Wiki says he was on loan to Lugano, but that's nonsense is what I've put. So that's another one where, like the Silvinho one, where the Portuguese people said there was no hint, there was no news of his passport. That's another one that's been edited over as the years have gone by. So who knows? Still fun though.
Couldn't track things back in those days, so you could get away with all sorts. Clearly, it was one of those examples. So, number 1 spot, Kaba Diawara. I mean, talk me through, because you the way you spoke about him was as if he was one of the most highly rated Frenchmen.
Yeah, he was. It was. Now this one is definite because I remember at the time them saying that. It was like with the Clive. If we were going even further back, you would find there was a transfer with Clive Allen. People go and look that up. That is unbelievable. I think he was at Crystal Palace, and QPR wanted him, and they said no, we're not selling him. So we bought him in the summer. He played 2 or 3 pre-seasons game, and then we sold him to Crystal Palace. And then they gave us Kenny Sampson. So that was a transfer that is exactly the same thing as a Nelson Vivas thing. So this stuff did actually go on. So, Kaba, it was a one-season wonder. He was having a good season with Bordeaux, having scored 5 goals in 17 games. Again, you have to dig deep for that because some say it was a lot more games, but it wasn't. I would have to looking at a French stats site to get that for them. And then he joined Arsenal in January 1999 for 2.7 million. And back then, that's a decent amount of money for a player. And he played 15 games for Arsenal and scored 0 goals. All he ever did was continuously abuse the post and the crossbar because he was he'd whack it so far out, ended up hitting the post and coming back out again. But he was definitely trying. But at the time, the papers were saying that Marseille wanted him, but Bordeaux refused to sell Kaba to them. So that he was signed for Arsenal and it'd be off to Marseille in the summer. Now that was all reported before we'd even bought him. So that is exactly what he did do. He joined Marseille in July 1999 for 3.1 million. So he made 400,000. Bordeaux went on to win the French league title the season after he left, the season that he left, because he left halfway through the season. And after 25 games and 0 goals for Marseille, he was sold to PSG in 2000, January 2000. So in 3 clubs in 12 months, he ended up playing for 17 different clubs over the years. And if you look at his goals record, he went off to play for Blackburn and West Ham. Goal scoring was not something that he was ever good at. But do you remember recently there was a young player that we had first refusal on him if he ever got sold again. We tried to buy him because then we were going to sell him immediately to an Italian or Spanish club. This was only a couple of summers ago.
Oh, was it Benassa?
Who?
Benassa? Was it Benassa?
Oh, I think that may well have been it. But I think there's a couple.
He was at Empoli, and we had like a buy option on him, and AC Milan wanted him.
Yes.
And we were going to buy him and then send him to AC Milan, but it ended up not happening. And basically, AC Milan just bought him straight from Empoli.
And I think there might have been another one in South America as well, another young player whose name I can't remember. But see, this stuff even happens nowadays. There's so many. I mean, you look at the number of deals between Chelsea and Atletico Madrid. I mean, some of that, and Chelsea and PSG, some of those stuff is going on. We can't say laundering because that's implying stuff that is plainly not true, and we don't want to get in trouble. But there's some dodgy things have gone on. Yeah, big allegedly in capital letters in that. But you look through football transfers and you'll see the same players going back and forth from club to club to club again. There's a couple of Russian clubs that have done it over the years. So yeah, it's just some interesting things. And then I gave you a little thing afterwards, didn't I, with some other players. So
Stepanov story is quite funny because I know the Stepanov story again from the Magic Sponge, because I think they were interviewing Paul Merson, and he was telling the story about how basically Wenger overheard a conversation about how highly rated Dennis Bergkamp was rating Stepanovs, but when he was actually just winding up Martin Keown about him taking his place in the squad. Is that right? From what I've got?
Best description of it, if you go and listen or read the Ray Parlour book, I had it on Audible, and he was saying on there that they were winding because Keown was coming to the end of his time at Arsenal, and we had Stepanovs on trial, and so you had Ray Parlour and a few other players, and every time Stepanovs did anything, they're going, "Oh wow, he's brilliant! Oh, he's magnificent!" And like you were saying, Wenger overheard this and went, "Oh, we'll buy him then. They really rate him." And then the players said, and then we bought him, and we couldn't believe that Wenger actually bought him because he was rubbish. Another Latvian legend.
Yeah. Is that do you look at that and think that a lot of people could use that as a character flaw of Wenger? Because if he's that easily influenced, do you think is that something that you could like criticize him for? Or
well, I think maybe not criticise, but maybe he had belief in his players and his staff that if they really rated someone. But then you've got the move of Andre Santos, who Wenger never actually saw play. And he thought he was a left back, and it turns out you go back, and I say to people, go to Wikipedia, go and have a look at Andre Santos' career. He was what?
Is it Fenerbahce, wasn't he?
Oh well, yeah, he was. Yeah, we did. But if you go back and have a look at his time in Brazil, he was one season with Atletico Mineiro, 17 goals in 28 games. And then another team after that, 6 goals in 33 games. And then my team, Corinthians, 9 goals in 34 games. That bloke wasn't a left-back. That bloke had never been a left-back. Even at Fenerbahce, he's got 17 goals in 77 games in his 2 seasons there. So someone must have said he was a left-back. He wasn't. He was a left midfielder.
Yeah,
that's why
he's playing as left back and left winger, so he must have been a left winger.
Yeah,
and we wondered why he couldn't defend.
It's not like one of those players, one of those defenders, like back in the day, Steve Bruce scored all those goals because it had come from corners, or when Lee Dixon scored all those goals because he was a penalty taker for us. But we've had so many. I mean, one of the other ones that barely missed out was Park Chu-young. I think we paid an absolute fortune for him from Monaco because he got 12 goals in 33 games a season. They got relegated from Ligue 1. And then he only played 1 game in the league.
There was a team in, it might have been Lille. I think it might have been Lille. Lille really wanted to sign him, like a genuine signing to play for their team. So I think it was the season that Hazard may have moved to Chelsea. So they needed reinforcements. And Monaco got relegated and they wanted him. And then Arsenal came in for Park Chu-young and he was like, I want to move to Arsenal because it's Arsenal. And Lille were apparently absolutely furious with the fact it might have been before the Hazard thing, and that might be one of the reasons when we came in for Hazard that Lille were just like, no, you can do one. But him, Ryu Miyaichi as well, the Japanese youngster who came from like a high school in Japan that was meant to be the next Ronaldo. He was a weird one. There's been some really odd. I mean, I even look at the Gabriel signing as a really strange one because we signed from Villarreal, and what's so strange about it is when we sold him to Valencia, I found it really strange because he was arguably the best centre-back at the club. I thought, along with Koscielny and Mertesacker, he had pace, he had strength, he didn't take any shit. It was it was a really odd decision to
sell. We needed a scapegoat back then, though, didn't we? I think he got to the point where wasn't he another Stats DNA signing?
Yeah, it was like that. El Nene was a Stats DNA signing. So, yeah, there's been some proper Inamoto you brought up in the message as well as an odd one. Yeah, and Lassana Diarra is another one as well.
That Lassana Diarra, we bought him from Chelsea, and he was a decent player for Gen. He went on to have a great career. I haven't got his stats up in front of me, but yeah, we bought him from Chelsea, and then he got the hump after 6 months. Said I wanted to leave. So, and Portsmouth at the time were. This is one of the reasons why Portsmouth ended up in the 4th division, being a 4th tier of English football, because they were just going and buying anyone. And so he went to Portsmouth after 6 months. We made a big profit on the deal, and then Portsmouth went on and did wonders for a couple of years. They won the FA Cup in 2008. So. And then you got ones like Joel Campbell, who it was magnificent for Costa Rica. I mean, even now at the age of 27, I'm just looking, 93 games and 17 goals for Costa Rica. And he ended up having 7 Arsenal loans out of the club. And
who was the Brazilian guy that we had that went on loan to Spain every single season?
Wellington Silva,
yeah. I just remember, to be honest, I remember him more from being on FIFA than being at Arsenal, because he was like just a little pacey player that at the end of every season, when the transfers kicked in, he would return to Arsenal. And I was like, who the hell is this Wellington Silva guy? So yeah, that was him. I mean, I find the Cole Jenkinson an odd one coming from Charlton, because we signed him for like $1 million, didn't we? And basically what we did was we signed an Arsenal fan, effectively is what we did. We signed an Arsenal fan at Cole Jenkinson. And then the more strange thing is about how long we actually kept him at the club before we finally last season sold him to Nottingham Forest. So, and
he kind of Arsenal, you wouldn't want to leave, would you? I'm not going.
Yeah, no, he got in a fair bit at the same time. So yeah, is any other names that come to mind, or you think we've fairly well covered it now?
Yeah, like you're saying, the Wellington Silva, he ended up having 6 loans away from Arsenal, and then he went back to the team in Brazil, Fluminense, that we bought him from, and he's now on loan at Internacional over there. And looking at my list,
it says yes, Lehmann back in 2011 was an odd one.
Yeah, that was a weird one because he decided he retired, hadn't he? And then he came out of retirement and came back to us, had a couple of games. But then I was also thinking of a list of transfers, players that Arsenal bought and never used. And there was one called Craig McKernan we bought from Grimsby back in the 80s, and he came to Arsenal with a bit of a fanfare and got injured and never played another game of football. And then we had, I'm going to mess this up, sorry if Chris listens, the Guillaume Warmers, the ex-Lyon goalkeeper. We bought him for the end of the season and never played him.
Was another one. I remember he was the one who signed with the Jet Fortune. He never played for us. There was one as well.
We had the Man United goalkeeper Jim Leighton. We had him on loan when he was gone back to Scotland with, I think it was Aberdeen. We had him on loan and never played him. And then
Suarez might be another. I mean, we signed him from Southampton this season, and he's because of the coronavirus, he's not been able to get a game. So
yeah, his contract runs out in the summer, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's.
Next year, Tom. That's a podcast ready. It's written itself.
Oliver Fourway says Emiliano Viviano. We got him on loan to be back up to Szczesny. He never played a game, and he ended up being quite a good goalkeeper. So I think he was at Sampdoria, or still is at Sampdoria. And then he went to Sporting Lisbon as well. So that's not bad knowledge on Viviano, but that's more so from playing FIFA than anything else.
But I think that happens quite a lot with goalkeepers. They're bought as backup, like that one who just went to Liverpool for. Was it Adrian? Was at West Ham? No one expected him to play a game, and he's won medals there.
Yeah, he's going to get a Premier League medal. He would have got us. Did they win the European Super Cup?
Yeah, because they played Pablo Mari's team in the final, didn't they? And Pablo Mari was
the World Cup. Yeah. So it's Flamengo, wasn't it? So yeah, he's picked up a couple of minutes. I mean, there's some really weird signings everywhere. Loads of teams that just sign players never played. Chelsea is a big one because you look at the players that have gone on, as you said earlier, like De Bruyne, Courtois. Not less so Courtois because he played a lot of games for Chelsea, but those Belgians like De Bruyne.
They had him early on though, didn't they? And loaned him out to Atletico Madrid for 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, and Salah obviously went back to Roma, and there's just been some really odd ones that have obviously done massive things. But yeah, this has been really, really interesting. I hope the listeners have enjoyed it. Tell me a little bit about ABW-wise. Podcast still going on during the lockdown?
We were talking on WhatsApp and we were saying it's really weird that everyone is confined to their houses and people aren't really watching podcasts at the moment. Our last one got on YouTube got 400 views.
Yeah, that's basically what we've been doing. It's weird. Everyone's got nothing to do all day, and there's content there, and people just are. I think basically people have given up on football. It's pretty much they're just done with it. I mean, what have you been doing in the lockdown anyway? I'm intrigued. How have you spent it?
I am playing on. Been watching a lot of Twitch and YouTube, and I've been playing Hospital 2.0. I should really go. I mean, now I've got it set. My camera set up. I might go and play it on Twitch later. On the ABW Twitch account. Yeah, it's like Theme Hospital, but the new version of it. It's magnificent. And I've been playing
front line. Is that
is it what?
Training up to go on the front line down at the Nightingale Hospital.
No, well, yeah, you would think. I'm surprised they haven't brought out some kind of coronavirus DLC for it, where all your people just get infected. But you do have viruses that go around during the game. You have to go and find the people and click on them and then heal them. But you just build a hospital, and then you got to build all the rooms, and then you get all these little things that go on. I just love it. I've been playing War Thunder, and I found out our mate Drew plays War Thunder, but he said I'm not playing any of that way that you play because I play it with. In the arcade mode, and I think he takes it very seriously because Drew is a bit of he does love his war history. So I can imagine him.
Warzone yet? Call of Duty Warzone?
I'm too old for that, Tom. I'm old now. 50 this year. My thumbs are old and slow and grey.
Something popped up on my Facebook the other day. It was that. Do you remember when we played FIFA against each other and you thought you'd beat me in that last minute, and we got it on video, and then there's a goal right at the end. It's like a long range shot, and it's just. It is on YouTube, yeah. I'll probably try and link that in the description. I'll try and find that.
But it's
it was some good times.
I was awful at YouTube, and I was going, "I'm beating the FIFA King. I'm beating the FIFA King." I was beating 4-3, or because it was just you were letting me win, and then you didn't expect not to be able to get back in. I was fouling and kicking and shoving, and you got that last minute goal. I went, no. I've never won a game online or against another human being, and I've been playing FIFA since it came out on the Mega Drive. I'm that bad at it.
Wow.
It's fun though.
I'm still going. FIFA 20, still going strong. So,
oh dear.
Deary me. Right, it's a pleasure. Appreciate your time,
it's been
mate.
Good.
If people listening, you've got some ideas about players that you found very odd that Arsene Wenger signed, please drop them in the comment section below. Please go check out some of ours and Danny's videos over on ABW, Burkham Wonderland, because we desperately need people to watch these videos because no one's doing it. And I know, to be fair, I know that most people watching this have been people watching all of the videos. So what you should be doing is sharing these videos around and telling people they're there, because for some reason, not many people watch. I mean, we interviewed an Arsenal legend yesterday, and more people listened to Drew's episode than Alan Smith. Now, Drew doesn't need that egotistical boost. So go over and share that Alan Smith video because it's brilliant, as it's been. Really appreciate your time, Danny boy. Thanks, always.
Tom. It's been brilliant.
You can find him on Twitter at _GFP. You can find a Burkout Wonderland on Twitter just by searching them. What's the actual app for that? Because is it just a Burkout Wonderland?
No, it's the AFC podcast, but we do actually also own the Bergie podcast. But yeah, when me and Gimli set it up, we went, I can't believe the AFC podcast is available. We'll have that rather than looking for the Arsenal pod, which would have been the logical one to go for, because there was only 2 other podcasts when we started it. So.
I mean, when I was there, the ABW radio Twitter account was going, and that's not been tweeted from since 2016. So.
Chris deactivated it, and then we don't use it anymore. I think we just went Twitter crazy when we hoovered them all up.
Fair play. Right, it's been a pleasure. We will speak to you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.